Today's session is on job descriptions, one of my favorite topics. So over this hour or so, I'm going to talk technically about how to build and use the job descriptions in TouchStone. And then I'm going to more importantly talk about how to use them as a management tool. So not just how to technically build them, but how to actually use them in management and for management. So I'm going to click to the organization chart. The organization chart shows the positions, departments, roles in a business. And each box on the org chart, when it's selected, takes you to the job description for that position. So in TouchStone, all the processes are listed over here in the 4 key functions in one key function or another. And then they are linked to the positions on the org chart. So all of these processes over here are linked to these various positions. One process could be linked to multiple positions if multiple positions are accountable for that process. And then when that connection happens, this is what it looks like. You start to see the processes listed on that position. So let's go back here to the org chart. To add a position, you click the little 3 dots and then you choose add. So now I've got a new box on my org chart. Once the position is added, you click on it, then it takes you to the job description. So this is what it looks like when the job description hasn't been built yet. The position title is always here, and when you click it, it then opens it for you to edit, save, or cancel. Underneath the title is what we call the objective. So this is the purpose of the position. This is the reason it exists. It's meant to be a sentence, no more than 2 probably, even a phrase, which describes the highest purpose. So you want to think high level with this. Think about overall results, not steps or details, but more overall results. I think it's kind of cool for an employee to be able to, in one sentence, say what their purpose is in the company. So what is their position here to do? I'll show you a few examples of these objectives. So this is the manager of marketing and sales, create marketing strategies and objectives and manage the sales department. So really high, again, high level. Let's look at this one. That one doesn't have one. Hopefully this one does. And it doesn't. Let's go here. So this says, manages and delivers all the company's products and services. So again, really high level. Another way to use this objective field is to put in other details regarding the position that might belong inside of what a traditional job description is, or maybe even in a hiring ad. So I'm showing you this because it's not wrong. It's just another way you could do it if you wanted to. So you're seeing here this overarching kind of a high-level objective is here. Report on the company's financial status, manage human resources, and employees in support of the entire company. That's a great objective for this office manager of admin finance. Then underneath this, you see education and experience, and that's listed, and then over skills, like overall skills. So this type of information, I think, is great for hiring purposes. The skills section might be good ongoing, but this education and experience requirements, that's not necessarily something that an employee needs to know all the time. It's really just for hiring purposes. But I think why people want to put it here is it's that the traditional job descriptions that a lot of businesses has this type of information in it. So you can put it in here. A method that I like better, though, is to take this type of information and add a process and call it skills and experience and qualifications for manager of admin finance, something like that. And then within that process, add a document and then cut and paste information like this into that document. Then you can link that process and make it the very first process on the job description. So that's a way of kind of condensing it or consolidating it into a process and having it linked where someone could click on it if they want to, rather than having it kind of here, right in the front of everyone's eyes every time they click on it. So that's the objective field. So let's go back to this blank job description. The job description has two sections to it. There's strategic processes and tactical processes. So strategic processes are high-level processes. They're developing, innovating, managing, creating. So things typically a manager would do. Tactical is the technical work. So the getting the job done kind of work, the staff work. Typically, strategic processes are in the 4 key functions, they're in the guiding the business function. Not all of them, but most is probably in the guiding the business function, because that function is all about guiding the company and its people. It's not a real clear right or wrong here. So if you're struggling with, is this strategic, is this tactical, put it where you think it fits best. There's not a clear definition. There is a more detailed definition than I gave in the Resource Center, if you want to read that and learn more about that. So now let me go through how to add processes to the job description. So the processes are linked from the 4 key functions. So to add an existing process, I click here, add existing process. It's asking me if I want it in the strategic or the tactical section. Then I choose the sub-function that I want to pull the processes from. So now I'm literally looking over at the 4 key functions. I would go to the sub-function that the processes are in that I want to pull on this position. So you want to think about what department this job description is in and go that department into those sub-functions. So if this was an office position, say, I might probably go to running the business. I would choose the key function I want to add from, or the sub-function. Then I would tick off the processes that I want to add to this job description, and then I hit save. So now the processes have been linked from that sub-function and the 4 key functions to this position. If I want to add more, I'd go back here, add existing process, again, strategic or tactical section, sub-function, go to the sub-function that the processes are in. Now I can drag up and down and choose some processes and not all of them. So you're literally just looking and thinking about this title and asking yourself, is this relative to the position I'm creating? Then I hit save. If you put a process in the wrong area, like you wanted it in strategic and you pulled it into tactical, it's just drag and drop. Another way to get processes on the job description is to go add them directly. So this would be if the process doesn't exist on the 4 key functions. I would go add new process. Then I would put in the name of the process. Then I would choose if I want it in the strategic or tactical section. Then I choose what sub-function, what key function and what sub-function I want it in on the 4 key functions. So even though I'm adding this directly to this job description, I still am going to have to link it somewhere in the 4 key functions, because the 4 key functions is this master list of everything. So I choose the sub-function that made sense for the process I'm about to add, and I hit save. If you see this, you're about to create a duplicate process. So this error message always stops you from adding the same process twice. Let's do this. Then I hit say, okay. Let's try that one. So then here's the process. When you add a process directly to a job description, I always think it's a good idea to click on it and then to go put the objective in. So this is the purpose of the process, just like the objective of a position. This is the objective of the process. And why that's good is when you're thinking of processes and adding them directly to a job description, you want to be clear on what you mean to be in that process, what that process is meant for. Sometimes we'll add processes and then you go back and look at them the next day and you'd think, what did I mean by this? So the objective really helps you be clear on that. Right to the right of add existing and add new, this is our print send button. So here you can print the job description, you can export it to Word or to a PDF, or you can print and or export the operating manual for the position. So what that does is it will print the job description, which is like a table of contents for the operating manual for that position. And then it's going to print all the details inside of every process in order. So inside of accounts payable here, it'll print the work plans, the checklists, the forms, the files. It's not going to print videos or audio files clearly, but it will print all the content inside of each process in order. And then you could export that to a Word document, and you could do the page breaks and format it correctly. And then you would have an external manual if you needed one. Always be mindful, though, of what you're exporting from TouchStone, because TouchStone becomes this repository for all of your up-to-date, relevant processes and procedures. If you export it, you've in a sense made a copy of that. So then things could get outdated, especially if you're exporting things and making changes to it because, oh, I need to change this and that, and you're doing that in Word and not in TouchStone. TouchStone is a paperless environment, and there's a value in that. Some more functionality on the job description page. You saw me do the drag and drop, so pull up and down. When processes are being documented, I kind of think it's a good idea to put like the most important ones at the top. So if you wanted to do this one next, you put that at the top. And then when it's done, you could go to it, complete it. So we're done with that, go back, drag it to the bottom, and then the next one's at the top. That's just a way of managing the documentation of your processes. If you want to remove a process from a job description, as I'm just hovering over right here, you see this little remove button. So I hit remove, and I say, okay. And now that process is removed from this job description, but it's not gone from TouchStone. It's over here in the 4 key functions still. So the way you get rid of it permanently would be to go here and delete it, not just remove it from a job description. Another thing I want to point out is there's another way to link processes to job descriptions. So what we did was you go add existing process, add new process, and we're adding them that way. Another way is here on the process itself. So we're on this accounts payable process. If I go to this little link chain here, I can then see my org chart, and I can see which positions this process is linked to. So from this screen, I can link it and unlink it. So if I wanted to remove it from bookkeeper, I'd hit this, and now the orange goes away and it's removed. If I want to add it back, I hit this, and now it's back on that job description. So this is a good way to do like an audit of all of your processes to make sure they're on the right job descriptions. You can go in your 4 key functions, which I'm coming back to right by hitting that breadcrumb trail. You click the process, go right to link to job description, and just make sure it's on the appropriate job descriptions. Link it and unlink it from here. Okay. So I'm going to go back to that position on the org chart. I often get asked the question, like, what is too many processes and what is enough processes? It's kind of hard to answer that question because it really depends on the complexity of the position and the complexity of your processes. On the operations side, it's a little difficult to answer because each of an industry dictates something different. But I would say just in general, if I saw more than, let's say, 40 processes on a job description, this one's got a lot. I would look at something like this and say, wow, that's a lot. And the reason I would say that is it is a little overwhelming. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's a sign that you haven't combined your processes well enough. So rather than having everything related to new employee introduction and orientation inside of this one process, you may have 5 different processes that all contain information that could be combined into this one process. I think somewhere around 20, 25 is probably about right for a managerial position. You can't document every single thing that happens in your business and every single thing that you do. 80% of it, maybe. But there's going to be a degree of amount of work that's not going to be documented. So you want to focus on, and I'm only saying that because you want to focus on the high level things. So that maybe the top 20% of what each position does. And when you get into too much detail, too much complexity, it just makes it more confusing than it needs to be. Okay. So let's talk about using job descriptions. So a job description in TouchStone is much different than maybe a normal job description you would be used to. The job descriptions in TouchStone are very work focused. They're very process driven. They're all about the work that happens for every position. They're very tangible. The best case scenario is if you can document a job description, like this one, say, and that each of the processes is clear enough that the employee can go to that process and pretty much know how to do that work by reading what's in it, studying, watching videos, whatever you've chosen to document it with. That's the ideal situation. So if that's the case, then a job description really becomes a list of what every employee needs to be trained on. So one of the primary ways you use a job description is for training. It's for new employee training and ongoing training. Training is essential for management because what you're doing is you're training your employees on processes, and it's, again, tangible and easy to refer to and easy to manage with. So the job descriptions are this great list for what each employee needs to be trained on. And then they're also great for ongoing training. New employee training is pretty clear. I think most people know what I mean by that. Ongoing training is a little different. Ongoing training means just that. It's managers holding their employees accountable to the processes. It's always realizing that training continues, like it has to keep going if people and your processes are going to evolve. If you do new employee training for the first 2 months and then we're done with you, you're, first of all, not reinforcing the training that you started with, but you're also losing the ability to continue to hold your employees accountable to those processes. Because if you stop talking about them and you don't make it important that they follow them, then they're just going to fall apart. So tools that help you use this job description as a management tool for training exist here on the dashboard. So here on the dashboard, employees have a control panel for the position they fill, like I have this one here. And then if they're managers, they have their managerial positions listed down here. So this management review area is what a manager can use to accomplish new employee training and also accomplish ongoing training. So how that works is if I choose a position, say I'm here, I'm then taken to all of his processes. This is the job description. It's the job description from the org chart. It's the exact same processes that were put on that job description through the org chart. Here I have the ability to put them into categories or groups. And this is why I was saying that the strategic and tactical at the end of the day on the job description doesn't matter all that much, because this is where it matters. And we don't organize things by strategic or tactical here. That's more of a developing thing. Here, it's very practical. It's like the groups that make sense to organize them into categories. Managers can go and organize their employees' groups. So I can go here and hit create group. I can edit a group. I can delete a group. I can drop processes around in a group. The employee can also do it. So here through the dashboard, the employee can go here. And then here in this section, I also can create groups and edit groups. We make it this way because sometimes it's better for an employee to be told, go into your TouchStone account. Those are all your processes. Organize them into groups. Or you and your employee do it together. You sit together and say, let's organize your processes. What an exercise like that is doing is it's getting the employee into TouchStone for maybe the first time, getting them to understand how to use their control panel, taking categories and moving group processes into them. For your existing employees who weren't used to having processes, and now you're implementing TouchStone, this can be a really important step to take, because again, you're getting them in there, you're getting them used to what it is, you're getting to start to allow them to think systematically about things, realize that the work that they do is a process. So there's huge benefits to that. So once the processes are organized into groups, for ongoing training, you would set about creating a plan for training the new employee. So we're going to talk about new employee training first, and then I'll talk about ongoing training next. So for new employee training, I have an example. Oh, I think right here. No. For new employee training, I like to organize the groups into training weeks. So here it is. So this is subject, time management, training week 1. So how I get this here is just by hitting create group. I put in time management, training week 1, save. And then I would take all the processes from the default list if I haven't organized groups yet, and then drag them into the appropriate group. So you're thinking there's going to be 4 weeks of training. There's going to be 8 weeks of training. There's going to be 6 months of training, whatever your situation requires. And you take those processes and you move them into these training weeks. So again, this is for new employee training. By doing this, you're taking the job description, you're taking that list of all the work the employee is accountable for, and you're creating a training plan out of it. So if this is week 1, what I could do is go to the first process. So I want John to work on daily planning first. I click daily planning. I go here to assign the process. I go here and give it a due date. So I want him to learn those 4 processes in the first week. I choose the date. I can put in notes to him right here and or send him a notification. And then I hit assign. Process assignment is one of our new releases. It's been around maybe 4 or 5 months, but this really, really makes this idea of training by weeks easier. So right here, I've got this daily planning process. Right here, go from top to bottom, and then I've got the due date. I can click here to see the note that I made to him. Now, John gets a notification saying, hey, she wants you to do daily planning by this date. He logs into TouchStone, he clicks right on this assignment, and he goes right to that daily planning process. Then in that daily planning process, he's studying the work plans, he's reading it. You may sit with an employee while they do the first process and try to explain to them what you want them to do. You may decide that you want him to study all 4 of these in the first day and then practice by doing it all, like filling out the logs and completing the to-do list. And then you might sit and talk about it. You might watch him, have him watch someone else do it. So you want to decide what the interactive part of this is. But in terms of the process itself, it's just going through each one of these and assigning them. The idea being that at the end of week 1, John has mastered each of these processes. Once I assign something to him and he's dropped it and he's completed it, it's going to fall into this completed assignments window. I could look at that assignment and see if he filled out the checklist correctly, see if he had any questions for me, which he can put into the assignment. If I'm happy with what he's done with it, I can then go to this process and I tick this flag that says mark as trained. And then I go back and it creates this little green check marks that lets me know he's done with this. I might even drag this to the bottom of his list. So it's very simple functionality. It's number 1, organizing the processes into training weeks or months, going and assigning each of the processes. So selecting them, clicking here, assign, filling this out, hit assign. Then it's waiting for him to complete the assignment, deciding what else you might want to do. Adult education is very similar to traditional education if it's done well. It's you have a textbook, we're reading it, we're studying it, we may watch some videos. The professor lectures about it, So that's the manager lecturing about it. We may do some role play, some examples, some practices with each other, and then we have a test. So TouchStone is modeled this way. It's study, read, watch, practice, complete the assignment, and the manager can decide what the test needs to look like. It might be simple enough for me just to say, oh, he gets daily planning, we're good with that. Or you might build a test. So this is the customer complaint process. And right here in the custom form, there's an employee test. So this is just the custom form, which we've built this kind of open-ended test where you're asking general questions. So if you take it this far and for the processes you feel it's necessary, you can build tests like this. And I'll go over more of the details of this when we get to the process tools webinar. So in this example, the employee could take the test and then it's completed. Then the manager, same thing, would decide, is it good or bad? If they liked it, they click the process, they choose you're trained, and then they move on. This kind of methodical employee training can be a breath of fresh air for a lot of new employees. I got a question after last week's session on the org chart, and someone asked, well, what, we ended up having a detailed conversation about this, but just to summarize it, the question was, what do I do if I spend 10,000 training this person and then 20,000 training this, moving this person up to here, and then they get up to here and I've spent $30,000 and they're really great and then they leave? Well, it's because you haven't created a game worth playing. That's a Michael Gerber term from the E-Myth. You have to create a game worth playing. You have to create a place people want to be. Constant surveys are done about this, and people just overwhelmingly say they leave an organization because of bad management. No management, terrible management, bad management. They weren't appreciated, they weren't trained, they were blamed for everything, the environment was toxic. This is not a game worth playing. So that's why people leave. Of course, there are other reasons people leave, but the majority is this. Employees overwhelmingly say that the environment they're working in is less important than the money they're making. And it's hard for us to believe that, but it's true. It's better to come to work and be happy and make a little less than it is to make a lot and be miserable. If you create a game worth playing, the senior techs from other companies are going to come work for you because you have the better environment. One of the ways of creating a good environment is by implementing things like this, where someone has this clear methodical training, where it's consistent, where I don't have people screaming at me from other departments because I didn't get something done, but I didn't know how to do it. Or so-and-so told me how to do something and I forgot, so I just faked it and ended up causing a huge problem. Now everybody is upset about it. So it's all these little interpersonal difficulties which make for bad management and make for a game not worth playing. So let's talk about ongoing management, because I think this is where a lot of the managers fall apart. New employee training, we can all kind of understand that. It's easy to see. The job description, this list of processes, is vital to that. It's the ongoing training which becomes where most managers fall apart. I think the number one reason that they fall apart is, first of all, they don't have management procedures to follow, no management processes. No one taught them what to do. Oftentimes they're master technicians that have been promoted to manager and they've never had any training. They may have learned how to be a manager in another environment and brought over all these bad habits related to that then they manage their department with, and it's just unhealthy and bad management. But another key reason is they just don't know how to do it and don't have the time. So time is essential. And when I ask managers, what's in the way of your management, it's always time. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And I think that comes from the dynamic where in a growing small business, the master salesperson gets promoted to manager. and they're still being asked to do sales. They're most comfortable with sales because that's their technical abilities. They get the most reward from that. And now they're put into this position that they don't know what to do. Or they're so overwhelmed with what's happening here in terms of sales, they don't have the time for this. The president or the CEO universally says, I do not have time to manage these people well. I'm so busy with all the other things. So before you expect your managers to do well and to have great ongoing management, make sure they're given the time. So what it looks like on a day-to-day basis is as a manager, I've got this list of processes that Sam here in customer service is responsible for. My job as the manager is to make sure that he's following them to get the best result. That's it. That's all I need to do. I want to make sure he's following these processes to get the best result. I want to do that with as least amount of problems as possible. I want to assume that he's doing all this the way that he was trained. I want to know that he's not doing it the way he was trained before there's a problem. That's the best kind of management. The manager knows everything is happening correctly and orchestrated before they learn about it not being that way from a problem. So the key to that is a manager having tools to know that the work is being done correctly without having to ask and without there being huge problems occurring because of it. So the job description, these processes, is key in that. So what happens on a day-to-day basis is I'm going to assume that Sam is going through and doing this work appropriately. I build in as many management tools within these processes as I can. That's reasonable. So here's this daily to-do list. This is a checklist of what the sales department or what the customer service department does on a daily basis. So Sam is saying to me, I've been trained in all these processes. I know I've trained him. So he's saying, I did this, I did this, I did this. So he's filling these out and then saves them back to TouchStone. So this is just an idea on a type of management tool that can be built into a process that allows the manager to know that things have been done without them having to ask. So you can build checklists for that purpose. You can also do custom forms for that purpose. So here's the customer complaint process. Here's a custom form. Here's the customer complaint form. For some things like this, depending on your industry, you might have this built into a production management software you already have, or you might have another way of doing it. It doesn't matter. The point is that you have something like this. And this is how simple it is. A customer complaint form is created because a manager wants to know that that customer has been taken care of without having to ask or without having to find out it wasn't done the hard way. So think of your management tools like this. How can I get information about what happened from that employee without having to ask? And that's what filling out a form or filling out a checklist inside a TouchStone is really all about. When you're explaining to your employees about why checklists are important and why forms are important and why TouchStone's important, you have to give them the context that this is about you, all of you, being able to understand that work is being done without having to ask or without having to wait until it's too late because there's a fire burning. So there's a logic behind why taking 5 seconds to fill out this checklist is important. And I think oftentimes employees just need to know what that is, and then they'll agree to do it as long as you're continuing to run reports and review that they're actually doing it. So build in management tools. So ongoing management, there's a process in the process library that gets you on the right foot with this. There's actually two. So this is going to sound really simple, but it is really simple. There's these two processes. They're in the general process library in Guiding the Business. I'm going to be going through the next few weeks of these webinars talking about what I call the top 5 management processes. So these are critical processes for you to download, edit, and use with your managers in order to get all of these great results that I'm talking about. These two one-on-one meeting, there's two. There's one for the employee and there's one for the manager. The employee one helps the employee get ready for a one-on-one meeting, and the manager one helps the manager get ready for the one-on-one meeting. What is a one-on-one meeting? It's a meeting that you choose to have at certain intervals. It can be weekly, it can be monthly, it can be quarterly. I would not recommend less than quarterly. In this one-on-one meeting, the manager is connecting with the employee, first of all. It can be 15 minutes. I talked to a TouchStone user the other day who does this once a month for 15 minutes. And he said it's been great. In this meeting, you're trying to achieve elements of the management philosophy. You're managing with documented processes, not people. You're trying to build and demonstrate integrity and trust. You're managing with empathy and accountability. You're making sure that each team member is successful. You're creating a positive and nurturing environment. So there's a lot of things in whatever management philosophy that you would create that can be accomplished through and with a one-on-one meeting. So here's essentially what happens. So I'm now going into my own control panel here, and I'm going to click the one-on-one meeting manager. So this process has got some work plans in it. It even has a video on how to do the one-on-one meeting. This is how to build the one-on-one meeting agenda. This is what to do when the employee's brand new, like they're having their first one-on-one meeting. Then there's some custom form in here that you can use to get ready for the one-on-one meeting. So in this meeting, it's a short amount of time where the manager's just stopping, everyone's taking a deep breath, and I'm just saying, let's talk about you for the next 15 minutes or next 30 minutes. Let's talk about how the work is going. What could be better? How are you personally? How are things at home? What are your goals for the next quarter or a week? So this form can be edited and changed based on what you want, but it just needs to be simple. In this one-on-one meeting, I'm always focusing on the job description, on the processes. So I would bring up processes that the employee has been doing really well. So I might say to Sam here, boy, you're doing so great on the customer complaints. I looked at the forms you filled out, how you got through that person was really wonderful. I also noticed how your safety and inspection reports are on time, all the time. Really appreciate that. It's acknowledgement, right? It's me respecting you. But then we could also use this job description for corrective action. So let's say Sam has not been filling out his inspection reports. And I want to talk to him about it. Or he's doing his scheduling and some major mistakes were made. So what we would do is sit down in the one-on-one meeting or sooner if necessary. And I would say, Sam, man, there was a real problem with the scheduling last week. So let's talk about it. Let's go to the process. Let's discuss the steps. Let's talk about where you went wrong, or maybe what's missing that caused you to go wrong. So that is a much nicer, cleaner way than me going to Sam and saying, God damn it, I trained you in the scheduling process and this problem caused this. I just told you last week, and what's wrong with you? That kind of management puts people on edge. It makes me not like you. It makes it for a bad environment. It's disrespectful. It's all these things that are contrary to your management philosophy. So managers do get frustrated. It does become a problem, but you take a deep breath and you say, let's focus on the process. Let's focus on managing the process, not the person, the process. Let's sit together and discuss it. If managers do this and you're looking at the process and you're really talking about what's right and wrong, the employee is going to respect what you're saying. It's going to be more objective, less subjective. It's going to leave everyone in an empowered place. And believe me, if you do that once with a process, they're not going to make that same mistake again. Absolutely not, because they know exactly where it is. They know you're serious about it, and you've really delegated that work clearly instead of advocating it and just imagining that you said it in a way that they could remember. So use the one-on-one meeting to use this job description as a way of keeping your employees on track, as a way of communicating. You're also going to learn a lot about how well your processes are working, because it's the manager's number one role is to manage the process, not the person. So if I'm sitting with a process in front of an employee and it's not good, it doesn't have the details it needs, there's stuff missing, that's my number one priority, is to fix the process and have the employee help me, whatever it takes to get it down. Another technique for managing with processes and ongoing training is to have, like, within a department, maybe have like a process of the week. So if I'm the sales manager here, or I'm the admin finance manager, I might have a department meeting with my salespeople, or maybe even the whole marketing team. So we would choose a process from their job description, and that would be like the process of the month, maybe. So in that process, we would sit and talk about it. We'd look at it in TouchStone together, maybe the appointment process. I would say to everyone, just focus on this process for the next month as you're doing it. Read over the tasks and make it a game. Like, we're going to talk about this in the next meeting, and I want some new, fantastic, energetic, kind of creative ideas on how this could be better. So you sit down and you talk about the process itself. You're going to be surprised at how engaged your employees get, because we're not talking about what's wrong with any person and what they're doing wrong and what problems. We're talking about how can we make this like better for everyone. And so you'll get this result of innovating your processes, and you'll also get a further result of making them important, right? Because you're sitting with everyone saying, this is important, we're following this. This whole one-on-one meeting process has another benefit. At the end of the year, I sit down, I went to the wrong one. I sit down with each employee, and hopefully you do too, and you have a performance review. So one-on-one meetings are happening all throughout the year. We're reinforcing processes. We're taking corrective actions. We're making decisions on employees, on whether they're capable or not, what they're great at, what they need more help in. All that's happening in maybe 30 minutes a week, if you can muster that, or 30 minutes a month even, that little bit of time. And then it culminates to the end of the year where there's a performance review. The performance review, and we actually have a process for this in TouchStone that I'll go over more in detail next week. All it is these processes here set on a grid from 0 to 5, or 1 to 5, I think, and a comment section. And so I, as the manager, think to myself, how did Sam do with customer complaints this year? I may look back at my other agenda forms to see, comments I had made. I'll probably remember, because I've been communicating with him all throughout the year about these things. And if he's still not doing well on this, he's going to know it. And I'm going to put -5, and I'm going to put the things that he has to change. And he may decide to change those or not. But one thing he's not going to do is argue with me about whether it's true or not, because he'll know it's true because we talked about it every month for the 12 months, even 30 minutes a month. So this makes performance reviews just so easy. Like, managers hate them because you oftentimes have to like fill out this arbitrary form with subjective things that maybe you don't really remember correctly or not. And then, worst of all, the employee's like, well, why do you think that? Well, where'd you come up with that comment? And then the manager's like, oh, it's just a feeling I have. They don't say that, but that's really what's happening. So if it can all be very clear and objective, one-on-one meetings all throughout the year, culminates to performance review, that's good management. It's the management that employees are going to appreciate. And it's going to help create a game worth playing for sure. Let's see, any questions? No. Okay. I had a few questions from last week that I'll just highlight for everyone. Sometimes people ask questions that other people have, and they don't, or they share the question and only one person is brave enough to ask it, I guess. So here on the dashboard, someone asked about how employees' names appear here in management review. So over here, you go to account administration. And so here's my user list. These are all my employees. And I assign each employee a control panel. So if I click John here, I go to control panel. And because he has a control panel for customer service, that means he will appear in management review for me. So I'm this position, manager of admin finance. And because John is underneath me on the org chart and he has been given a control panel, then he appears in management review. The issue people sometimes have is they give the managerial control panel, but they don't assign the others. And then you're wondering why the names aren't there in management review. So let's go back here. Another question is about security between, I'm summarizing this, security between users. So because I've got customer service here, and then there's 3 people who have that control panel, or they've been assigned to this role called customer service. When John logs in, like I'm logged in now, he's going to see customer service here in his control panel. And he'll go to the processes and do things in them and save things and fill things out. But the only people who can see what he's doing is him and me, because I'm his manager. When Sam logs in, he sees the same processes that John does, but when he completes them, goes through them, completes forms, saves checklists, no one else can see those except for Sam and me. So that's how it works. TouchStone gives access by position on the org chart, and then access to all those processes on that job description, but each user is unique. Let's see. Hopefully that makes sense. One more is about running reports. So if I'm in my control panel here, well, let's do it another way. Let's say that Mary here has to complete reports for me as the bookkeeper. So she does her finance checklist, she does her key indicators for the month, and she's doing those things in TouchStone. If I want to see what she's completed in her own control panel in TouchStone, I go to Mary here, and this is one way. I can click the process. So we're diving in deep here. That's 3 clicks so far. I go here, and then I can go over to the saved checklist, and I can see all the checklists she's saved by date. If I click it, I go to that checklist. That's one way. That's not the best way, though. The best way is to go to reports. So I click reports. I go to management review. So there are 2 types of reports. There's control panel reports, which allow a user to run reports of their own work. So things I do as the manager of marketing and sales. And then there's management reports. If I'm a manager, this allows me to run reports of what my employees were doing. So I can put a start and end date. I can search the save as title. So whatever it was saved as. I can do it by user. So I could go to Mary here. And then I can even go to type of tool, like checklist. And then when I hit run report, based on what I've put in the criteria, it will show everything that I'm searching for. I didn't put a date range in this, so it's showing me everything. So if you put in a date range, then it condenses it to that week or that date. If you see untitled here, it's just that she hasn't saved it as anything. So the save as is right on the tool itself, and whatever you put in the save as is, you can search for that and it appears here. Underneath the save as, you always see the employee. So here's Mary, and you see the process, and then you see the name of the process tool of the checklist. This is helpful when you don't choose a user. So you're running a list of multiple employees. So here, this shows me, since I didn't choose a user, I'm going to see everybody. So here's Jack, and then I can scroll down here and I can see Mary. So if you have employees who are doing weekly or daily checklists, monthly checklists, this is a quick way to make sure that everyone's doing their checklists. So I'm going to talk more about this when we get into the process tools page, but checklists are only as good as they're managed. If you have people completing checklists and the manager's not looking at them, they're going to stop doing them. So this is a real quick way where I could go reports, management review. I put in the date range for the week that I'm looking for. And then I go down here. I can even choose checklist here or not, leave it blank, hit run. And now I'm going to see everything that the checklist that everybody did in this date range. And I can quickly glance through. Oh, Mary didn't have hers. And then I would immediately go to the dashboard and assign her that checklist and say, you didn't do it last week. You need to do it. If you manage them that way, you're going to always have the checklist there. It's going to be very short order before people realize that you're looking. Next week, we are going to talk about documenting processes. One of my favorite topics. So we're going to go to a process here, and we're going to start with work plans and checklists. And then the following week, we're going to finish up with the rest of the process tools. I focus a lot of time on work plans because the work plans are the tool that's used the most. They are the most valuable, I feel, in terms of documentation. So I'm going to talk about how to document a good work plan, what a bad one looks like, how to make yours better, pitfalls when documenting work plans. I'm going to show you how to use our new AI teacher here creator here to build work plans. So if you have any employees who you eventually want them to be documenting processes, or maybe they're doing that now, this would be a great webinar to bring them to.